What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Bass 365. We got another live cast for you tonight. We've been doing a bunch of these things, and you guys seem to like them a whole bunch. Tonight, we got some special guests. We've got a couple Yo-Zuri pros, Braxton Setzer and Clent Davis. We're also going to be joined by Chris Bishop. He's like the guy we all answer to. He's the sales and VP of sales and marketing for Yo-Zuri. There's a lot of new things coming. We're getting ready to kick off the season. Right now, let's get Chris on here and introduce him. Hey, Chris, what's happening, buddy?
How's it going, Ricky?
Good, man. Good. It's a little cold up here. I'm sure you're enjoying some nice weather down there in Florida.
Yeah, well, actually, where I live in Florida, it's been getting pretty cold this year too. I think we're sitting at 50 degrees right now, which for Florida is freezing. So it's moved up to the West Coast, and it's been a little colder on this side than I'm used to.
So you're the guy kind of behind all this. What makes it all happen with the pros and I guess some product development and stuff like that. I think it's always good to have somebody on the show that's truly an expert on the back end part of it. So when we get to the Q&A part of the show, anybody has any questions about, the nuts and bolts of the baits, Chris can surely answer them for you. So right now I'm going to jump off. I'm going to bring Braxton on. I'm going to kind of let y'all get started. Clent's having some issues logging in. So I'll get him on here as soon as I can.
Sound
good?
Yep.
All right. Braxton, what's happening, man?
How's it going, guys?
Good. I'm gonna turn this thing over to you and Chris for a few minutes while I try to help Clent get on here.
Sounds good.
All right.
So how's it going?
Good, man. How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah. I've been busy.
Yeah.
Took a little time off at the end of the year. Spent some time with the family, but it's been hitting the ground running since January 1st. So.
Yeah, I saw you went striper fishing the other day. That looked fun.
Yeah, I snuck in a couple trips before the end of the year, but now we're back to reality and back to business. We've had a couple trips for business to some distributor shows, getting some of the new product out into the shops. So it'll be, if it's not there already, it'll be there soon. Early spring probably for some of the shops, putting it in for the 2023 season. And we're excited about, a lot of the new baits that we're introducing this year. And we're excited about the opportunities for that product on the tournament trail as well.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I just got a big shipment of the new baits and some of the new colors and some of the tried and true baits. And, we're getting ready to start the season. So we're wide open, tackle prep, getting boats rigged and ready. And, but it's always fun when you get a big box of new baits and kind of get to put them through their paces and, get your favorites so you can kind of direct people into, hey, look, I've had a lot of success on this. Give this one a look. And then they hit the stores and they get to see them. And this 3DRX, the whole line, I'm really excited about that. And another thing that's great about those is the price point. You can't really beat the price point on those hard baits. You don't see that price point in the market very often. And some of the colors and some of the styles, I'm looking forward to putting this the new flat crank, the 55 flat crank to work at Okeechobee, because it's a coffin bill. Little flat profile to it. It's going to be a tight wobble, but I think that thing's going to be killer over top of that 3-4 foot deep grass.
Yeah, that we're excited to launch that series in general. I think it fits a lot of what you see in the market right now from a sales standpoint, but it also fits a lot of what we needed to introduce for where the fisheries are going.
Mm-hmm.
So, pressure is what, all the lakes are seeing. You're starting down here at Okeechobee. That's no exception. That's for sure.
Right.
And with that pressure, it's a movement to, being able to get fish to bite. Smaller profile baits, that series has, the majority of that series is 70 millimeter or less. And then, $7.99 price point doesn't hurt. But just from a fishing standpoint, I think, it fits a lot of what we're seeing in a lot of different fisheries. It's the size allows you to fish it in a lot of different areas, whether you're up fishing small creeks, getting to the back of some bays and stuff like that on some of the lakes. Also, I think in that series, the cold water stuff. There he is. He figured out how to use the computer.
They didn't ask me to download Chrome. I mean, like, I already have Chrome, but for some reason, it want me to download it again.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
No, not at all. But yeah, that whole line that 3DRX, you talk about the smaller profile, and yeah, there's been a big uptick since 2020. Really, there's been a big uptick in people that are using the outdoors. And fishing as a whole, as a sport, has really grown and got a lot of new angler recruitment and people that are coming back to it. And so, that those smaller profiles and more finesse-y things come into play. And a lot of people, when they think finesse, they're thinking, spinning rods and soft plastic baits. And that's not always the case. You can have a finesse crankbait and one of my favorite ones for a long time is coming back out in the 3DXR, and that thing's like what, 1.75 inches long. It's a little bitty profile, and it's a great bait, and you can catch big fish on it. And Clent can attest to that. Big fish still bite those little baits, and sometimes that's the only thing they'll bite, especially when the water temperature is cold. Yeah. Or you're in a high pressure situation and they get hit constantly with, these massive baits and you run something that's a little more subtle and looks a little more natural by them. And, that just triggers them because it's something that they're not getting beat down with all the time. So
when people say cold water baits, what do you consider cold water? When really is that time period?
Well, yeah, unlike y'all, we actually have winter up here. So it's been pretty mild this year, but I would consider cold. Probably anytime the water temperature gets in the 40s. Bass are pretty comfortable in the 50s and into the 60s, and then they start to stress a little bit once the water temperature gets a little higher than that. But that's just the biology of them. I won't really go much into that, but anytime you get into the 40s and we even see water temperatures on occasion here in Alabama dip into the 30s. And so, that's when some of those more subtle baits or smaller baits, it's when we really start leaning on some of the tighter wobbles and stuff like that and crankbaits.
Yeah. And I think this series, we've hit a couple styles that with the flat crank, with the smaller round body crankbaits, with a shad style bait, with a 80 millimeter jerk bait, which is kind of in a sweet spot for us and is a good early season bait. There's a lot of good cooler water, early season, early spring pre-spawn baits in this series. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're excited about, being able to get it out into your guys' hands in time for the start of the tournament season. Now, Florida's not the first place you think of when you think of a hard bait fishery, obviously. So, but the next couple tournaments after that definitely are.
Yes.
So, yes. We're excited about getting those baits into your hands. I think one that could work in Florida, and certainly a style that we're famous for making in the Rattling Vibe, is the new lipless crankbait in the 3DRX series. Mm-hmm. It's actually a little slower sink and something that you can fish in some higher grass where, a lot of the lakes you're going to be fishing here in Florida are 3-4 feet of water and choked full of grass. But that lipless crankbait's a great bait, and something a little lighter so you can fish it in a little bit shallower water when the weeds are a little bit higher, I think, is something that could be a difference maker in that series.
Yeah, I'm fired up about it, man. I ordered a bunch of them today from y'all, and my first two events, Okeechobee and Seminole. I can tell you now, I'm not saying it's going to be one on a rattling bait, but the rattling bait's going to be a player there. And I mean, the new one, man, it's awesome. It's different looking, and it's something the fish haven't seen. So I'm pretty fired up about it at Okeechobee and at Seminole. I'm pretty sure I can just go, honestly, if I would just stick that one bait in my hands and go there and practice and fish a tournament, I'd get paid in both of them. But I think there's a strong possibility that one of those two tournaments, just the way Okeechobee is right now, and Seminole as well, a lot of tournaments will be one on that bait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to kind of touch on what Chris is saying a little more, most people across the country, when they think of a traditional, rattling bait kind of fishery, you're thinking of, Gunnersville, Chickamauga, Rayburn, where the grass is deeper, and there's some of the grass in some of those lakes grows deeper than the deepest place in Okeechobee. And it's such a different fishery down in Florida, and those lighter baits with the slower fall, they're a little easier to keep up, and even if you need to keep them up a little higher in the water column, you can just up your line size and keep that bait from working you to death, because that's one of the key things with it is you want to pop that bait out of the top of that grass and let it kind of flutter back down. And with the slower flutter, the grass may only be 1.5 feet underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And the water depth may only be 3 or 4 foot. And in some places down there this time of year, even, it's the middle of winter in most of the country, but the grass down there in some places can be almost topped out.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have that kind of style of bait, that rattling bait that you can fish at a slower pace or keep up higher in the water column, and you're not just working yourself to death trying to rip a big bait and keep it up the whole time, that's when some of those baits down there can come into play. Because, hey, look, the Florida bass, they absolutely love a rattling bait, and there's no doubt about it. And it's a bait that kind of gets overlooked, when you talk about Florida in general, because everybody thinks going to Florida, we're going to pick up a big flipping stick and go punch grass and this. And yeah, it works down there. There's no doubt about it. But some of the biggest populations of fish down there live in those bays with that underwater grass. And the most efficient way to fish them is with a moving bait. And you make long casts out across that. You find a big pot of fish, and sometimes those pods of fish can be absolutely huge, and you can sit there and make the same cast over and over again and just wear them out, because it's a big wad of fish that's moved in off the lake and they're getting ready to spawn. And in a lot of cases, that's where they're going to spawn. They're just going to make a bed in that grass and spawn right where they're sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Braxton, one thing you said, and something I wanted to talk about on here, was line size. A lot of people don't know that. Like, to us, it's just one of those deals. But you're right. Like the rattling vibes, that whole series of bait, people don't get it. That the shallower you're trying to get that bait, the bigger your fishing line needs to be. And
right.
Everybody ties on 12, 16-pound tests, and they're sitting there snatching and can't get it through there. And it's really that simple. That if your bait, if you're trying to get it in 2 foot of water or less, just put it on 25, and it works a lot better. A lot less work trying to snatch it out of the grass, and you're going to catch a lot more fish.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your size line typically when you come down here to Florida, if you're throwing that style of bait?
16 to 20, yes.
16 to 20, yeah. If you're going somewhere where, just say you found a deeper grass line, you throw in, say they want a smaller profile, and you're looking at like a traditional rattling vibe, and you go with the 3/8, which is the little guy. And I love that bait. I throw that bait a lot. But if you're trying to throw it in like 6 or 8 foot, you may go down to 12. And then, just kind of adjust your line size, because I want that bait to tick the top of the grass. I don't ever want it to hit and stop and mar up and really, where you really have to snatch it. I just want it to barely tick the top of the grass, and you can feel it when that bait stops moving, it stops vibrating. You can really feel it on that fluorocarbon, but you can feel it when that bait stops vibrating, when it just barely touches the top of that grass, and you just kind of pop your rod like that. Well, when you do, that bait will jump and kind of flutter erratically coming back down. And that's when a lot of times those fish will just slackline it, and they'll get it. I've had them get that 3/8 rattling vibe all the way down in their crushers. And, you have to get a pair of pliers and dig way down deep in there, and you don't have to worry about that fish coming off, because he just absolutely throated it.
Another thing, something, yeah, it may lose more fish, but if it's just super, super thick grass, all of us have done it, put it on braid. I like a leader with it, either whether it be T7 or one of those, but you can really get it through there with a braid. The problem is you got to have a super limber rod to do it, because if not, you're going to lose a lot of fish.
Yeah, it takes all that stretch out, and so you want to downsize. I typically throw a lipless on a cranking rod anyway, like a glass composite rod, because it is a crankbait. Yeah, it doesn't have a lip on it, but it's a crankbait, and so I want a cranking rod, and I try to match my rod to the size of the bait and the line that I'm throwing and how thick the grass is. Like if I feel like there's a chance that the bass could like bury up in the grass and I really have to horse on them to get them, kind of tore loose to coming out. You lose fish doing it, but if they just bury up and shake their head and come off and you never have a chance at them, then you're wasting your time anyway. So crankbait rod for rattling bait is that's all I throw. I too, if I'm throwing it on braid, I do like a leader, just because when that bait does pop loose from that grass, you don't want that, because it's so erratic and you just can't tell what it's going to do. Sometimes that treble hook will wrap up there and can hook the braid. And so you use that short leader, like a 2 foot long leader, just to keep that hook from catching into that braid and keep you from wasting a cast.
When you're fishing that shallow grass and you're ripping lipless baits out of the grass, you're going with traditional multi-BB version, or are you moving over to the 1-knock version at all?
No, it's kind of let the fish tell you what they want. I fish both of them. And if there's a time that I feel like they don't even want to rattle, I may even switch over to like a square bill or something like that, something that's silent, that's different. But I like the BBs. I like the 1-knock. Everybody's got their preference. My first choice is probably, no, I can't say that. If I'm going to reach down and tie one on, I'm going to tie 2 on. They may be the same color, but one of them will be a 1-knock and one of them will be a traditional one. I'll make 10 casts with one and 10 casts with another and figure out what the fish are wanting. Clent may have a different opinion, but that's kind of how I approach it.
No, that's it. One thing I've done, I've got a bunch of them out in the shop, is actually drilled them out and filled them full of super glue. It doesn't cast as good, but it doesn't make any noise. I mean, it's solid, so it runs fine. It just doesn't cast as good. But there have been times where, they don't want any noise at all. I mean, it's doing enough of that coming through the water that they feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. They feel it. I mean, you think of something like a shad or a bluegill, they're not swimming around with BBs in them, and they still find them and eat them. But, that's, and a lot of that has to do with pressure and how many times those fish have seen that bait, whether they want a silent or they want a 1-knock or the BBs or the BBs. The BBs can be aggressive and they're loud. You can hear them. You can hear them from a long way off in the water. And if you can hear it standing on the boat, that fish can hear it coming from 3 times as far as what you can hear it. So
maybe we should build a silent version rattler, Bob.
Well, I think we've got enough lipless crankbaits. I think we have more lipless crankbaits than just about any other style of bait in our lineup, just because, we cover it all from, the mini, which is down to like a 16th ounce, and then all the way up to, the 3/4 ounce. Also in the hardcore lineup, we've got a couple different lipless crankbaits in that, with the flash and vibe, which is unique because it's a 3/4 ounce lipless baits that's the size of what would typically be a 5/8 or even a 1/2 ounce. So it's got that size profile to it, but with a little bit more weight. And obviously that'll be something those type of lipless baits will come into play after we get out of the state of Florida here, and get to some areas where, that style of bait stays prevalent through the spring. I mean, what time of year do you typically put down, the lipless crankbait? Is it a temperature deal? Is it really, is based on, where they are on the spawning cycle? I mean, how does that work?
I mean, I say it all the time. There's never a bad time for a jerkbait or a lipless crankbait. Honestly, there isn't. I mean, there's better baits to be thrown, but if you're just going out to catch fish, there's never a bad time to throw a lipless crankbait or a jerkbait. Either or. I mean, they work year round. Heck, I didn't, like our spots here at the house and smallmouth up north, largemouth aren't as big on it, but dude, they're so aggressive. You can throw a rattling vibe bomb year round, even on bed, and you're going to catch them on it. Yeah, but I mean, as far as getting away from it, yeah, usually spawn, post spawn, you get away from it, but that's probably just because that's the way the book's written. I think there's times when guys aren't throwing them that they should be.
Right. And that's another thing. What Clent just kind of what he was saying kind of reminded me of this. And I even throw a lipless in the schoolers. Like if I see a place where they're busting bait, it can be dead middle of summer, and throw a lipless in there because one, I can fish that bait at whatever depth I want to fish it to. I can bomb it. I can throw it. One thing about chasing schoolers is if you don't land in them, I mean, on the saltwater side, Chris, if you don't land in them, it's hard to get them to bite. So I want something that I can absolutely just rip out there and hit them no matter how far away from me they are. And then if they want it, I can let it fall through them like a dying shad and the fish that are underneath them. Because a lot of times the predators will sit underneath the bait ball to push the bait up to the surface. Let that thing flutter down through them. Rip it through them, burn it away from them, and kill it. There's a bunch of different ways to fish it. But yeah, there's no bad time to fish a rattling bait or a jerk bait spots, smallmouth, occasionally largemouth. They typically, I agree with Clent on that. I typically catch more largemouth on them in the cooler months, from fall all the way up to right before they go on the bed. And then kind of, but it never goes away. I have a lipless pretty much tied on year round, but that's one thing that I was, when I first saw this at iCast, and this is the bait I was talking about earlier, the flat 55, you get somewhere like Florida or something like that, and this bait's going to dive 3 or 4 foot deep. It's got a coffin bill on it, but I think that thing's going to come through the grass really, really well. So I think it's a bait that can be used outside of what it's traditionally built for, whether that be stumps or rocks or something like that. I think this little bait's going to be killer. And if you look at the profile on it, it's not far off from a rattling bait profile. It just has a lip on it. And one thing about adding a crankbait into a grass presentation is if you do get in a situation where you're just having an absolute hard time keeping that bait up, when this hits the grass, you can just stop it and it'll float back up. So you can reel it till it hits the grass. And when you feel it just start ticking, just kind of stop it for a minute, let it float up, reel it down. And you may only move that bait 3 or 4 foot at a time, but it's essentially doing the same thing as popping. It's that hit the grass, deflect, kind of, it floats instead of sinks. And it's just something different that triggers those fish to bite.
That's another one of those things too on fishing line. Everybody's sold by the book that you got to throw it on 10 to 12 pound test, and you can bump it up to 16 and 20 and get a little shallower and still going to catch plenty of fish on it.
Well, that would definitely make me feel better about hooking something down here as well.
Yeah,
it's a jungle. 10 or 12 pound flora makes me nervous if there's money on the line. I'm fishing down in Florida.
Hey, the 10, that's one thing you can say about the T7 is the 10 and 12 is probably way stronger than you give it credit for. I've hooked fish on as small as the 6 and 8 up under boat docks and things like that, and no reason I should have ever landed those fish other than the fact that the line was up to the test. When they wrap you around 3 poles and you got them on a spinning rod and 8 pound line and you reel them right out of it, that's the line. So, it down in Florida, yeah, everybody likes the heavier line and stuff like that. And it makes me more comfortable too when I can catch them on 20 versus 8. But I think the T7, 10, and 12 is you're doing pretty good if you have that spooled up.
Oh yeah. I think there's a little bit, the difference for down here though is I just don't want to let him bury in the grass.
Right. Yeah.
It's not, I'm not worried about him getting broke off. I just don't want to go digging.
Yeah.
especially with some of those other things that are floating around in the water down here too. So.
You can go dig a bass out down there and come up with an alligator. So
Yeah. I've had more than one largemouth eaten by gators down here. So
yeah.
if they get hung up on the wrong thing and they're a little close, they move in quick.
Yeah.
So.
Another thing on the line, man. Again, just talking about size of line is the diameter of our line compared to most competitors. I got caught up using a lot of 20 in places, and really, if you look at pretty much every competitor down the list, you can use R25. Just the Japanese, the diameter size of it, so much smaller than most of the line in production.
That really comes back to what you mentioned is Japanese. Yeah. So they have basically their own scale for the size of the line. You really have to look at it from a diameter standpoint, especially when it comes to bass fishing. I think on the saltwater side, it's a little bit different. We really just look at pound test. But on the freshwater side, when you're talking about, the size difference between just making one step up, whether 12 to 14 or 12 to 16, it makes a big difference on how the baits react, the depth that you're fishing, and the type of structure that you're fishing. So it is. So all of our lines made in our line factory in Fukuoka, Japan. Everything from, ice fishing line, bass fishing line, up to, 300 pound, 400 pound fluoro leader for the saltwater market. It's all made in the same place. Nobody makes anything for us. So, the quality is going to be strong, but T7 has really been a game changer for our lineup as far as a quality standpoint. I put it up against anything in the market, regardless of price. And, I'm always hesitant to say something's cheap because that means, that's price point's different for everybody's budget, but it's affordable, especially when you compare it to the competition from a quality standpoint. Right. Anything comparable to that quality is going to be double the price or more. Mm-hmm. So it's been a really good line for us. It's what we needed to bring over that true premium Japanese fluorocarbon for this market. And I know pro staff has taken advantage of it since day one. I think you can thank Brandon Card for that one. Mm-hmm. for a little bit. He kept pushing me to go to Japan and bring back, the best of the best that we offer from a fluorocarbon mainline standpoint. And that's what we did. And I mean, he fished it for 2 years before. I think he fished it for a year and a half, probably before even any of you guys got to fish it.
Yeah.
And that's just because he's so particular on the line that he fishes, and such a pain in my I had to shut him up, but it turned out to be a really good thing because it brought a great product to the market for us. Top Knot has its attributes, but it's not as manageable as T7. But its attributes as abrasion resistance and strength are as good as anything on the market. T7's a little bit more manageable, a little bit more well-rounded fluorocarbon. It's our premium fluorocarbon, whereas Top Knot's more of our entry level. They could both land tons of fish. I know Clent was winning tournaments on Top Knot before T7 ever came to the market. So between the two, we've got a strong lineup, and that I wouldn't trade the products we make in the line category against anybody in the market, regardless of name.
No, and you said it. You hit it right on the head when you said premium, and that's when I have people ask me about it. That's what I tell them. I say, you're buying a premium fluorocarbon. It's soft. It's manageable. It's got great castability, and I mean, you can't argue with the price point for what you're getting, because you're right. Some of the line that is a direct comparison to that is more than double price on what you're getting for another premium fluorocarbon, and that's when people understand that about it and fish it, and that's what I encourage people to do, is go pick some up and just fish it, and you'll see the difference. Top Knot was great. I caught a lot of fish on Top Knot, and you pull a truck with that stuff. T7 is it's a great line. I prefer the T7 in situations like if I'm pitching or flipping or on a spinning rod or something like that, because it's a little more manageable. It's a little softer line as far as the limpness of the line. So it doesn't tend to get memory as bad as some of the others. But you can't argue with it at all, especially where it's at. And I'll continue to fish it. That's the true testament is, when you have guys, pro staff guys that this is what we do for a living. And when you use the product, that means something. I mean, you're going to fish the best stuff we can get our hands on. And it's easy to promote something that is extremely good and you use on a daily basis. And you got to have the trust in it, because if it wasn't good, it'd be hard to sell. And it sells itself when you put it in somebody's hands.
Where when you come down to Florida, I know with traditional fishery, soft plastics in a lot of cases for the Florida market. When you're coming down here, when you're fishing plastics, let's say at Harris Chain, Toho, or even Okeechobee, when do you decide to fish plastics on braid? When do you decide to fish plastics on 100% fluorocarbon?
Fishing pressure, 100% is all fishing pressure. Preferably, yeah, you want to fish plastics on braid nonstop, but you get we're going to Okeechobee here in a few weeks, and it's just been getting the crap bit out of it, and then we're going to get down there for 3 days in practice. And yeah, if you find a little honey hole deal where nobody's messed with yet and they'll bite anything, then much rather than throw braid at them. But I'm sure the way it's going to be beat down, yeah, fluorocarbon, man, it's amazing, and you just got to know it from experience. But you can still get a few extra bites on fluorocarbon that you will not get on braid. And in a lot of cases, it's not a few extra bites; it's every bite or no bite. I mean, and it's amazing to think that people say fish don't look at the line. I don't think they look at it. I think they feel it. I think they feel that braid cutting through the water. Like it's built into them.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And, braid is great. And if I could flip, everything from now on braid and catch them on it, that would be fantastic. But there are times, and Clent nailed it. You pitch in there. I mean, you see it, Chris, the cattails and stuff like that. Well, if you pitch braid over top of a cattail, it makes noise. It does. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's in a heavily pressured situation. I think that noise, those fish know what that is. And that's when you switch to something like a 25-pound fluorocarbon, because it's smooth, it's slick. It doesn't sing when it goes across vegetation. It just kind of slides right down in there. And then you get in certain situations where the water's clear, and people don't really think about that. The water in Florida is, it looks dark from the top, but if you really get to looking at it, it's pretty clear, or at least that's where you need to be fishing, is where it's clear.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, that's where you're going to get bites,
right? And so
that's a big part of the battle. Most of the time, fishing Okeechobee is finding where the water's clean, especially this time of year. I can tell you for the next 10 days, it's going to be blowing at least 20 to 25 from a direction or another, and it's pretty much doing this.
Yeah,
one day it's south, the next day it's north. So it's finding that clear water. I think when you find it, there's going to be plenty of your buddies there, and fluorocarbon's going to be, everybody's going to be fishing in the same hole. So flipping with fluorocarbon, fishing plastics on fluorocarbon is probably going to be a go-to for the start of the season here.
Right.
And,
yeah.
It doesn't have to be T7 and top knot. A lot of my buddies around here, to this day, you go to the fishing hole in Clanton, Alabama, it's slap full of the hybrid. Mm-hmm. That's something Chris has pushed me on. And a lot of those guys now, they're flipping hybrid. They're flipping on a braided leader. Hybrid's got a little more stretch in it. It's still clear. And it's probably the best. And it's something I ordered some from y'all today because I'm about to go to Lay Lake here the next few weeks, and I'm going to flip with it, braid the fluorocarbon leader. and try to get used to doing that, because then you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's what we've been doing for forever. Y'all are just starting to figure it out. So, we don't tie our braid straight to a lure on the saltwater side. We fish braid basically 100% of the time, and we fish fluorocarbon leader.
Yeah.
So it is really the best of both worlds if you can get away with it. I understand why you guys fish 100% fluoro, why we fish 100% fluoro when you're throwing certain styles of baits. It makes a lot more sense in certain open water aspects, certain styles of baits that you don't want to pull hooks on. It just overall, it makes a lot of sense. But you're 100% right on the hybrid. That stuff is lights out, and it's nothing new. It's been around for 20 years. It's been the best copolymer line on the market for 20 years. Anybody who fished it just comes back with rave results. I mean, Sermon's been flipping with hybrid down here in Florida for a long time, and fishing on Okeechobee with it. And he was one of the first guys to tell me about fishing it, and he still fishes it on all his topwaters too.
Yeah,
it's what I use. I like it for a freshwater leader material over 100% fluorocarbon in a lot of cases, because I think it gives a little bit more action to a lot of the lures too. Yeah. If I'm fishing a topwater on it, or even because I'm crazy, I fish braid to leader when I fish jerk baits in a lot of cases. But I'm different. So, because I come over from the saltwater market, so I'm used to that type of thing. But I use hybrid because it gives it that little bit of leeway to let baits move, especially if you're fishing like a walking bait later in the year. Hybrid's a great line choice, but there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. I mean, I use it, anytime, I would think I would use a monofilament line. I use hybrid because it's like mono. It just lasts 3 times longer, and it's less visible under the water because of its fluorocarbon components. And it's just an exceptional all around line. I know some of our other pro staff use it later in the year up north when they're fishing smallmouth too.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong here, but doesn't the hybrid go up line size? Doesn't it go up a good bit?
Yeah, it goes up to 40.
Yeah. So
if you were looking for something heavier, like a 30-pound to be fishing plastics in the grass, and you wanted something heavier than 25, hybrid would be the go-to. You're still going to get a lot of because it's a true 50-50 throughout. You're going to get a lot of the fluorocarbon aspects, but if you were trying to fish a 30-pound 100% fluorocarbon, or a 40-pound 100% fluorocarbon, there's only so many ways to make that not be stiff. That's a stiffer type line, and that's when you kind of exclusively get into it being a leader material. From a castability standpoint, I know you're just flipping, but still, manageability is still a concern. The hybrid's a great way to go. We do have some leader materials if you're looking for just like a braid to a heavier leader material for flipping. Then you could look at doing, something like top knot leader or HD clear leader, which I know, you guys have used in certain circumstances in the past as well.
Yeah. And that's
go ahead.
You touched on that, and that's something I need to get some of the heavier hybrid, because I did kind of dip into the top knot leader line for a while, doing braid to fluoro for flipping, and went up as high as 50. But it's like you were talking about, you get once you get to that kind of size, it does get a little stiff, and sometimes this stiffness can hold the bait from being able to punch through. Like if you're punching hyacinth or something like that little extra stiffness can keep that bait from falling through that hole. So yeah, I'll have to get some of the hybrid in the 40 and give it a try, just for something a little bit softer, to maybe so that bait gets a chance to turn straight up and down.
And on the other side, for folks like me, they're diehard crappie fishermen. They make that in a 6-pound high vis green/yellow, and there's a lot more junk you can buy in the stores that are that colored. And trust me, it's the best stuff made.
You got. I crappie fish with the 10-pound high vis braid actually, and then I fish it to either a 4 or 6 pound clear leader of hybrid, and
Yeah.
I mean that's my go-to. I'll actually sometimes if I'm fishing somewhere, even though Braxton's right, we have tannic water, but it does get to be a clear tannic, especially where I'm up a little farther in North Florida. Now that I'm crappie fishing there, I fish T7 6 pound.
Yep.
So I got the fanciest crappie line set up on the lake. So, but we do quite a bit of that down here. But it just as an all around line, I know that either you can't go wrong with either one of them, even down in the lower pound test. Later in the year, when everybody's staring at a machine and fishing straight up and down, then all that stuff comes into play as well. And that's where we've really advanced as a company, is in the line category.
Yeah.
We've had some really good baits. I think we made a lot of strides with, and honestly, the strides that we've made on the lure side has all come from you guys. So I appreciate the help. That's for sure. And basically all I've done is take recommendations from pro staff and relay it to the guys in Japan and get what we need for this market. I mean, some of the baits, the 3DB lineup is, your larger tournament size baits, in my opinion. That's what you guys use most of the time. And then obviously the Rattlin' Vibe series is kind of a one-off, but covers everything you need from a lipless crankbait. And then the 3D RX series to go along with it. That gives you the smaller profile, more finesse, hard baits, and really rounds out just about anything you could possibly want. And of course, we got more ideas and more good stuff coming, for ICAST this year and in the future. So,
yeah,
I mean,
it's great that, like you said, you've taken ideas from us and listened and put some of that stuff into play, and that helps. It helps everybody. I can't necessarily say that's an industry standard, but when you got good communication on both sides of it, it makes what we do easier, and hopefully it makes what y'all do easier, because we're all on the same team, and that's put out the best product we can put out, and get it in people's hands and get them to try it, because that's the hardest part, is to get people to try something, and the baits, the line, all the product speaks for itself once somebody kind of gets a hold of it and breaks away from some of the norms in the industry, and step out and try some different things, because even the finishes on the baits, with a lot of the internal paint and stuff like that, you're talking about you can catch 1,000 fish on it, and that bait's still going to look the same at the end of the day, and you're going to put it right back in your box, and guess what? You're going to have it next time you go, and it's still going to look good, and you're still going to want to fish it because you haven't beat all the paint off of it. And it's not just a clear body there anymore. You actually have the same bait, and the 3D RX, that stuff. Another bait I was excited about is the Crank DD, and that's going to be a traditional cold water grinding rock.
Yeah, and you guys are going to be there in what, third tournament of the year, third tournament, I think.
Well, yeah, I've got 2 tournaments right here. So our second tournament, we go to Clark's Hill,
Right.
which is in Georgia. That's a bait that I'm going to grind into some rock while I'm there. And then we go out to.
You guys are out in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's really where it's going to come into play.
Oh yeah, that and that's what that bait. That's the kind of place and kind of style where that bait's really going to shine, just because of what it is and how it is. And I got one of them right here. I'll pop it out and kind of show everybody. But it's a grinder bait, and some of the colors, especially the new crawl colors that we just came out with this year, that bait right there, I probably can't see it very well, this camera and this light, but this kind of bill, you're looking, that shouldn't be a problem getting that bait down to 10 or 12 foot easy and being able to grind it into some rock and get those hard deflections with that bill and that beautiful, beautiful crawl color right there. When they get on crawfish hard in the winter, quite a few crawls there you can rotate through and figure out what they want based on watercolor. And so, it's going to be a good one, I believe.
Yeah. I think when people think of Yo-Zuri in the bass market, it's always been lipless crankbaits and then topwater baits, which I'll put our walking baits up against anybody in the market. And there's been a lot of money won on those baits in some big tournaments, and it's got good publicity. But what I think we've really taken strides in the last couple of years is, putting out a much better quality product on, round body crankbaits from square bills to deep diving crankbaits, and then on the jerkbait side as well. And with a full range of jerkbaits now, everywhere from 70 millimeters up to 130 in the hardcore side, but 110 in the Yo-Zuri side. So I think we've made some big advancements there. It's just, getting the word out and getting them into people's hands and let them see the quality for the price point, because everything we make on the bass side from the Yo-Zuri is, $9.99 or less. So that's unheard of for a Japanese hard bait company. But again, those ideas came from the pros, and I'm not going to take credit of any of that. There's some stuff on the other side of the business that I came up with on my own, but certainly everything that's been successful on the freshwater side has been filtered through me to the Japanese directly from our top pro staff. So I appreciate that with you guys. And I think Ricky's got a couple questions for us before we get out of here today.
I have my opinion on it. I'll let Clent take it first.
Yeah, the Kiss's spotted bass probably fights harder for the first minute and a half, but the northern smallmouth never quits fighting.
Yeah, that's right. And especially if you get them somewhere where they got either deep water to run down into, or they got current. Smallmouth they just don't have any quit in them. But there are times that especially if they got current on in the Coosa River, you hit them on 25-pound T7 and a 7.5-foot flipping stick, and they rip out through the current and turn sideways like a tuna, and you can't do anything with them. They pull off or break your rod.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I only got one. I'm looking forward to all of them. Of course, the Northerns. I'm looking forward to Seminole. I fished there a good bit. I think it's going to be a good one. But Lake, of course, I grew up there. I get to sleep right here and practice and fish it every day. So, yeah, no, I've wanted to fish there my whole life. So definitely looking forward to Lake the most.
Yeah, I can't. I'm a little envious that y'all get to go to Lake and sleep in your bed. That's nice. I don't know. I would probably say, I like the Mississippi River. I like the Mississippi River up north. And then, the two wild cards this year, I think, are going to be Eufaula and Lake of the Ozarks. I've never been to either one of them, and it's kind of exciting to get to go to somewhere new and explore.
I mean, dude, I wish we went more Lake of the Ozarks, that area of the country. That's like crankbait, topwater king, and I don't, for some reason, bass doesn't go there anymore. I'd love to fish there.
Yeah. Ooh.
St. Lawrence River.
Yeah.
It's not really a lake, but 1,000 miles St. Lawrence River. There's nothing like it.
That's fishing.
I do. If we're talking about strictly lakes, Champlain's a good one. But yeah. Hands down, my favorite place to go is St. Lawrence River.
Everything up north, especially nowadays, and fishing has grown. It's amazing what it's grown since 2020, but just where it's grown, and they actually have a fishing season up there, and plus the place freezes over, so the fish get a little bit of a break. Whereas down here, everything just they get fish 7 days a week. Bishop knows he's in Florida where it never freezes.
They get hammered down here. My favorite lake to freshwater fish in the country, and I fished there a couple times, is actually Lake Ontario, and then drive right across from Buffalo and fish Erie on the other side, and you can fish both those lakes you can stay in one place and fish both those lakes on back-to-back days, and that's as good of as it's a lot of fun to smallmouth fish there, because you could catch them anywhere from 3 feet of water to 30, 40, 50 feet of water. It's a lot of fun. A lot of different ways to catch them there too, and they get big and dumb up there too.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yes and yes. I typically, when it comes to the big pencil, I'm gonna throw it on like a 40-pound braid, on a cranking rod, and I can sling it a long way out there. Probably not. If I put any fluorocarbon on it, it's gonna be a short leader, but that would be only if I didn't have something else. Probably a copolymer would be better, because with the fluorocarbon, you're going to get a little more sink to it. So if it's something you're working really fast, you can get away with fluorocarbon. But yeah, I throw most of my big walking baits on braid.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, that's pretty much it. Ricky's talking about something, but I can't hear him.
I think you're muted, Ricky.
There you go. All right, guys. There's a lot of great information. Lots of exciting stuff coming out of Yo-Zuri. There was a question, I can't find it now. The guy was saying that he used Seagar and wanted to know how you thought T7 compared to Seagar. My thought would be to just tell him to go buy a spool and try it, and then get back with us and let us know.
I mean, my personal experience, I would say, you have to go out and see how it works for you. Seagar is a quality company. I'm not going to say anything bad about any product that they make, but what I would say is compare price point to the quality that T7 is, and then see what it seems like for you for any other brand, and see where the dollars come out when you look at that comparison. And I think you can't go wrong with T7. But Seagar makes some high quality product. I'm not gonna say anything bad about that. It's another sister Japanese company that makes a really quality product, but they're damn sure proud of it. That's for sure when they get it to retail.
Yeah, well, I know there's a fish catch of Braxton somewhere. We'll have to find it, and we'll get it thrown up on social media. We actually got the video of it, and it was amazing. I mean, it's just amazing. So Braxton, I'll get with you in the next day or so, and we'll try to round that video up and get it up on everybody's social.
Yeah, I think I got it. And I know the one you're talking about, where the thing's wrapped around a ladder and a jet ski.
Like, no way he's getting that out. No way he's getting that out.
To touch on something else about the T7, and it's going back to what Clent said earlier. Don't only compare the price point. Look at the diameter too. If you're looking at the diameter and the price point, you may find that, where you would typically fish a 16, you can fish a 20 in T7. And so, right. Do a deep dive and do a comparison and get something. So if you like 16, look at the diameter. And if our 20 is the same diameter, get a spool of that and put it through its paces and see how it fits your fishing style and see how it fits your budget. You can't complain about the price point on it for sure.
Right. It seems to be a big thing with Yo-Zuri. You're not trying to get it all at one time. With the bait prices and the line prices, it's something your average guy can afford. We were at a show this past weekend, and the guy was in there selling $175 swim baits. and he couldn't hand them out fast enough. And I mean, for me, that's just, you know, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry, guys. It's just not happening.
That's you can only do that in a place you know you're never ever going to lose one.
Right. Could you imagine?
That's in open water. There's very few baits I would pay that type of dollar for, but you better be willing to lose it if you're going to pay that type of dollar figure. So
yeah,
that's where we become more successful brand. So
I've kept y'all long enough tonight. I really appreciate it, Chris. I think we need to probably, you know, I know it's Bass 365, but I'd like to do a saltwater show at some point when, you know, when y'all get rolling again good. I think our viewers would be interested in that. Clent, I'm gonna see you a lot this year. Braxton, I'm gonna see you a lot this year. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to get out of this cold Virginia weather and get down to some warmth, and it's gonna be fun.
You coming to our events this year?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna miss some days of the first one just because of overlap, but yeah, we're gonna be there this year and see what we can make happen.
Well, the first ones are in the same place.
Yeah, but I think it's a couple overlap days with the Bass Pro Tour or something like that. I've got a guy that's going to be there to cover it all. The ones I'm not at, I got a guy that's going to be there to cover it for me. So, yeah, we're ready to get the grind started. I'm excited now, but about June, I'll be ready for it to be over with.
Yeah.
So Chris, thank you very much. I'm gonna knock y'all off the screen. Got to take care of a little housekeeping here before I get off this thing. But guys, I appreciate it. Anytime you want to do one, give me a shout. You got some breaking news, give me a shout. Planning on doing a Yo-Zuri one at least a month, one a month. So we have more than enough time to bug you on these things. So see the phone ring and answer it. It's important.
sounds good.
All right, guys. Thank you.
See y'all.
All right, guys. That was awesome. Lots of great information tonight. Do yourself a favor. Check out the whole Yo-Zuri lineup, the T7. I fished with it a lot. I can't say enough about the line. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. We had another one tomorrow night with the crew from Blazer Boats. That's going to be an interesting show, probably the show of the year. You don't want to miss it. If you haven't downloaded the app, you know what to do. Go to the app stores. It's free. What else have we got? The season kicks off for Bass 365 on the 8th of February. We'll be down at Okeechobee. What else have we got? Got any questions? Hit us up on social media. Got a special guest you'd like to see? Hit us up on social media. There's not too many guys we can't get on here. So if it's somebody you want to see, let me know, and I'll do my best to get them on. Thanks a lot. Everybody have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.